Hey guys, Juan here. Today we have another Power Query video based on a real use case. What you see right here is a spreadsheet. It contains a product ID. It contains some columns that we just want to remove dynamically. I just literally named them. This column shouldn't be added. And it has some cells per period. But what is interesting about these periods is one, not every single month is complete. Two, some of them might be empty. So here we have the month of May, but it's empty. And three, they have not been unpivoted. So with some months that pass, we are going to get every time more and more columns. How do you solve this, and how do you make sure that this doesn't break and to make it as dynamic as possible? Well, I'm going to show you. Firstly, we have to get rid of this column, and maybe for this case, I am going to select every other column. So remove other columns. Later, we're going to make this more dynamic. Remember, this completely changed the order in which I wanted things to be, but that's okay. I'm now going to click on product, click on unpivot other columns to transform all of those columns into rows. Now we have something that looks more similar to the end product that we want. Because I have the formula bar here visible, you can always just click on view and make it visible. I have it visible. I know that I don't need to rename these steps from here. Like if I rename them from here, I'm going to create an extra step. I personally know that the best approach is to modify the code, and instead of attribute, type here dates. Or instead of value, I could potentially call these cells, but for now, I think the word value is okay. It really doesn't matter too much. Now we need to turn this one into an actual date, and to do that, you need to remove the references that it has here to the word period. You can do that by clicking on extract after a delimiter, and that delimiter is period. There are quite a lot of approaches to get this done, so don't worry if you came up with a different alternative. And now we can just simply cast this into a date. This works. Now what my client also wanted is to always get the latest month possible. Let's just do it manually for now, and the latest month possible should be December of 2020, right? This is it. Now, right now we have something that works, but I know that this is gonna break next month. So how do we make this dynamic? Let's open for that the advanced editor and maybe highlight the steps that might be problematic. The first step that might be problematic is removing other columns. Why? Because we hard-coded some columns. So if you see here, or maybe from here, this is hard-coding the names of the columns that we want to select. But this is not very dynamic. It would be much better to phrase this in terms of please select every column that contains the word period. So how do we do that instead of hard-coding? Simple. Let me firstly add some spacing here in the advanced editor. And we're going to create first some intermediary variables. The first one is going to be called column names. For this one, I want the method called table column names, and the only argument is going to be the table above. Now, what this does is it gonna gives me a list of all of the column names in a data set. It's gonna look like this. Okay, now the second thing that I want to do is I want to mark every column, or every period really, every column that starts with the word period. To do that, you simply use the method list find text. In which list you want to do this? Well, the list is called column names, and the text that I want to find is period and a minus sign. What this is going to do is it's going to highlight it's going to select every column that contains the word period at first in a more dynamic way. And now you guys probably see where this is heading. The last step that we want to do is to remember that we just remove a column called this cannot be selected. It can be sometimes just one column, it can be multiple. We just know that we want the product plus whatever starts with the word period. How do we do that? Well, we need to create a list containing both of those elements. So maybe let's call this one columns that I want. Columns that I want. And this one is going to be composed of like list combine. What list combine does is it takes multiple lists. Well, actually it only accepts one list, but in there you're supposed to nest as many lists as you want to combine. In other words, what we're going to do is right here at the too many things, yeah. I click once again in the wrong place, my bad. Yes, we want a list containing the product column, which, as you remember, is one of the columns we want to keep. And now I need another list, and that other list is we already created. It's called every period. Now how this looks like is this is just a list of the product of the columns that I want, and I am confident that this list is going to be transformed dynamically. So I can very simply replace this reference here in selected columns. Instead of like hard coding every single column that I want, I can do it this way and add columns that I want. And then I need to close this and add a comma. Right. And now if I check columns remove, we have exactly the same as before, but now I'm confident that this is being done dynamically. One decision that we have to take before we continue is, do we want every single intermediary step to be saved in the code? Which, to be honest, makes it more readable if you know that people are going to open the advanced query. But the problem is when you're checking the applied steps to your right, it's much less readable to see all of these steps. So the question now is, do I want to nest that code to remove these intermediary steps? Let's just say, for the sake of the example, that the answer is yes. I want to nest this intermediary code. How do we go about it? Well, we just take this column names, cut it, paste it in here, and take this list find text and copy it into here. I'm also going to remove the steps I don't need. And now this step, I can probably cut it and replace it right in here. You should also probably take some time to make sure that this is formatted properly. So here, combine list and this. Yeah, it's hard to know how exactly to make this a bit more readable. But what I can tell you is that taking some time to turn this into a more readable thing, it's really worth it. So I personally do it this way. Let me check. Maybe this comma is not supposed to go in here. Let's see if I didn't mess it up. Oh, okay, now it works. It works, and we know that we are dynamically selecting the columns that we want. Good. The next problematic step is the pivoting. which if you see right here, we are pivoting every column that is not product. And well, I guess in this case, we can expect that this is going to work, assuming that there is no more columns than just the product. So let's just leave it for now. But if we wanted, we could also do something very similar to what we did in the previous step to make it more dynamic. It's not a problem. Another step that we want to do more dynamically is the filtering of the rows. Remember that we only want to see in the final step the sales for the very last month available. When we check the code right here, it hard-coded a reference to the date that we want. How do we remove this and make it more dynamic? Well, by using the list.max argument. And for this, I think, no, okay, my bad. So what list.max, and maybe let's just turn this into something a little bit more readable for also my sake and your sake. So in each row, okay, yes, there you go. So yeah, in each row, I want to check if the data is equal to the max date. But in reality, we're only doing a reference to a column and not a table. If I wanted to make a reference to a table, I should probably copy the whole change type and add it here. So I have change type, which is the name of my table, plus the date, which is the name of my column. And let's see, ideally, we just wanted this to work. And so far, it is working. Now, how do we test that this works exactly like we wanted? For that, we go to this spreadsheet, which I have right here. Yeah, it's called Pivot Products. This is the spreadsheet that I wanted. To know that everything is working properly, I am going to add another column. And now remember, if we did things properly, these columns shouldn't have been added, right? So I'm going to add another column. And on top of that, I'm going to create yet another one with the period. Maybe let's just call this one period January of 2021. Rand between, so that, oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna use rand between to populate those numbers. It really doesn't matter too much what it is. So let's just say a number from 1 to 1,000. Populate the whole thing. Now copy and paste the values. I'm going to save it. And now if I did it properly, the moment I update Power Query, January 2021 should be the latest month, and this extra column shouldn't have been added. Let's see the moment of the truth. I refresh, and it worked like a charm. So the column that I didn't want wasn't added, and right now the max date is January of 2020. One thing to notice is the moment that I did the unpivoting step, Power Query didn't unpivot anything for the column containing period May 2021 because that one is empty. So this formula right here called unpivot other columns, or its equivalent like pivot column, erases anything assuming that there is no data available, which was the case here for period May 2020. So one thing to know, I hope this was useful and that you learned a lot. Feel free to check also my other Power Query and Power BI tutorials in this channel. Thank you so much for watching.